I never thought the person who'd destroy me would be the one who knew how to fix me. She held my secrets like treasures, my dreams like they were her own. We planned everything together, our futures intertwined like branches of the same tree. But betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the ones who know exactly where to cut. And she didn't just cut me. She carved away everything I loved, piece by piece, while smiling right beside me. I unlocked the front door to Hearth and Honey Café just as the sun slipped over the rooftops of Willow Creek. The morning air carried the scent of baked bread drifting from our kitchen vents. This place used to be the highlight of every sunrise in my life, the soft hum of coffee machines, the glow of pendant lights reflecting off polished wooden tables, and the chalkboard menu that always smelled faintly of fresh mint. Lauren arrived a few minutes later, pushing through the door with her usual swirl of floral perfume and energy that filled the room faster than the aroma of espresso. "Morning superstar," she said, slinging her bag onto the counter. "Ready for the big catering pitch today?" I set out a tray of honey-glazed croissants. "As ready as I can be. This contract could change everything for us." She winked. "For you. You built this place. I'm just the assistant manager with the fancy stapler." We both laughed. She'd insisted on calling herself that title, even though she helped with branding, social media, supplier calls, practically half the business. I always told her she was more than an employee, more than a friend, she was my anchor. We spent the morning prepping pastries and test plating mini quiches. At noon, the representatives from Bloom and Bounty Catering arrived, a large farm-to-table company expanding into boutique cafes for exclusive events. I presented everything with passion, our honey sourced from a local apiary, our bread kneaded daily by hand, our commitment to comfort through simplicity. They tasted, nodded, asked questions. One of them, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, handed me a folder. "We love your concept," he said. "But we're finalizing a partnership with another cafe on the other side of town." My throat tightened. "May I ask which cafe?" "Bean and Bloom Coffee House," he answered. "They pitched a nearly identical concept last week. They even mentioned collaborations with the same apiary you use." Lauren froze. Her smile faltered for half a heartbeat, but she quickly recovered, stepping forward. "Well, I'm sure they're great too," she said, tone bright yet shaky. The representatives excused themselves, leaving me confused and disappointed. We had worked for weeks on this pitch. The idea wasn't common, honey-focused comfort cuisine wasn't exactly trending. I turned to Lauren. "Do you know anything about that place?" I asked. She took a moment adjusting a napkin that didn't need fixing. "Just a new cafe. I think they opened recently." Catering contract or not, the cafe stayed busy. Customers greeted us warmly, friends came in for their usual orders, children pressed their hands eagerly against the pastry case. On the outside, life looked wonderful. But things began to shift. A longtime supplier canceled our honey delivery without reason. When I called to ask why, the owner, Mrs. Harding, sounded nervous. "Mia, I'm sorry," she said. "Bean and Bloom signed an exclusive agreement with us. They're taking our entire stock. We didn't have a choice." I stared at the empty honey jars lining the shelves. "But, you've supplied us since we opened." "I know. I'm truly sorry." Days later, a rumor hit town that Hearth and Honey was struggling financially, that I had mismanaged funds and might be selling soon. I confronted 2 customers who brought it up. Someone said Lauren mentioned it, one of them replied gently. Like she was worried, you know? I laughed it off, but the words stuck to my skin like syrup. Lauren worked the register with a wide grin, tapping in orders and chatting with customers like nothing was wrong. That evening, after closing, I tried talking to her. "Did you mention anything about me selling the cafe?" I asked. She blinked. "Why would I do that? People heard it from you. People assume things. She shrugged and began counting the drawer. You overthink. Everything's fine. The word fine echoed louder than any alarm. The next hit came sharper. Hastings Events, a local wedding planner who once raved about our tea cakes, suddenly stopped returning messages. I walked into her office to speak face to face. She greeted me politely, but with a certain stiffness. I hope you understand. We've partnered exclusively with Bean and Bloom. I forced a smile. Was there an issue with our last event? No, she replied. But their representative assured us they could offer a more stable long-term commitment. Representative? Lauren Hayes. She's incredible. Very professional. My heart dropped so fast I nearly lost my balance. She represented them? The planner nodded, oblivious to the storm forming inside me. She talks very highly of you, though. Says she owes her experience to you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My voice had scattered like crumbs on the floor. That night, I returned to the cafe after hours. The lamps cast golden circles across the wooden floor. I paced, replaying the woman's words. Represented them, exclusive agreements, stolen concepts, rumors. I noticed Lauren's office door slightly ajar. A stack of flyers peeked out, advertising Bean and Bloom Coffee House. Their logo bore a striking resemblance to ours, soft earth tones, honeycomb shapes, even the tagline "Where comfort grows sweet." Only slightly altered from "Where comfort tastes like home." My fingers shook as I flipped through documents littered across her desk. There were email drafts, proposals for event partners, and spreadsheets of business contacts, all ours, but formatted under Bean and Bloom's branding. A photo attachment sat open on the screen, Lauren smiling in Bean and Bloom's uniform, posing with the same catering reps who rejected us. The betrayal felt colder than any winter I'd known. I heard the entrance door click. Lauren rushed inside, breathless. Mia? Why are you? I turned the laptop toward her. What is this? She froze. Her lips parted, searching for an explanation. I was going to tell you. Tell me what? That you stole my business? That you're working with Bean and Bloom behind my back? It's not like that. Her voice trembled, but her eyes hardened, a glint I'd never seen before. They noticed our concept, she said, and reached out to me. They offered me a chance at real leadership. You're talented, Mia, but you limit us. You always play small. Limit us? My hands pressed the table. This cafe was our dream. You said. That you dreamed, she corrected. I followed because I didn't know what else I could be. But I do now. My throat constricted. So you sabotage me? Spread lies? Steal clients? Is that who you are? She stepped closer, anger cracking through her composure. You never saw me as an equal. Don't act surprised that I finally stopped living in your shadow. I stumbled back like she'd slapped me. You were never in my shadow, I whispered. You were beside me. Lauren looked away. Bean and Bloom will expand fast. They want someone who understands branding and growth. Someone who doesn't settle for a tiny neighborhood cafe. I deserve more. And I don't? She didn't answer. The silence screamed louder than her betrayal. The next week spiraled. Longtime regulars walked past our door, heading to Bean and Bloom instead. They opened with fanfare, balloons, local celebrities, press coverage. Their menu featured almost everything we pioneered. Lauren stood on their grand opening stage, microphone in hand, describing the cafe she built from passion. Each light carved deeper. I stood across the street, hidden behind sunglasses, watching customers take photos of the ribbon-cutting ceremony. No one noticed me. I blended into crowds I once served daily. Inside, Lauren smiled like she owned the town. Suppliers pulled out of contracts. Instagram influencers unfollowed us. Reviews turned sharply negative overnight, criticizing wait times that never existed, claiming food poisoning, inventing scandals. Many had usernames suspiciously created that same week. I filed complaints, tried responding politely, offered discounts, none of it helped. One afternoon, a couple who once praised our cafe returned only to insult the pastries, filming themselves for social media. Bean and Bloom's croissants are way better, the woman said loudly. This place feels so, last season. Laughter followed as they left. I gathered leftover pastries and boxed them, refusing to let staff see how much the words stung. By winter's first snowfall, our revenue had dropped nearly 60%. I considered cutting hours, maybe reducing staff. But the team we had was small, people who depended on these jobs. I couldn't bring myself to make their lives harder because of my failure to protect what I built. One evening, after last call, everyone except Lauren had left. She stayed behind less often now, always claiming she had projects or networking dinners. I approached her cautiously. Lauren, we need to talk. The cafe is struggling. I need you with me, not against me. She sipped her latte slowly, her expression indifferent. Maybe it's time to accept you can't keep up with bigger players, she replied. You're exhausted. Why cling to something that's clearly sinking? This cafe isn't sinking. It's being pushed underwater. She shrugged. Competition is part of business. You're not competition, I said. You're sabotage. Lauren stood and collected her purse. I'm done arguing. I'm tired of you blaming me for your shortcomings. She walked toward the door, but paused before leaving. Bean and Bloom is offering me a partnership, she said. Officially. I'm moving on. The door shut behind her, leaving the air thick with abandonment. But betrayal didn't stop there. A week later, my landlord requested an urgent meeting. He greeted me politely, but there was tension in his voice. I received an offer from a corporation to take over your lease, he said. They can pay triple the rent you do. I inhaled slowly. Bean and Bloom? He nodded. They're expanding. They want this location. I'm current on rent, I said. I've never missed a payment. I know, he replied. This isn't personal. It's business. But it was personal, at least to the one pulling the strings. I tried rallying support in town. I visited community boards, explained the situation honestly, invited everyone to a customer appreciation day with free coffee and pastries. A good crowd came, enough to fill the cafe for a few hours. Laughter returned, clinking cups, old friends chatting. Hope flickered like candlelight. Then Lauren appeared in the doorway, crisp blazer, new hairstyle, confidence pouring off her like perfume. Well, isn't this charming? She said loudly. A pity party with scones. Several heads turned. What do you want? I asked, stepping forward. She handed me an envelope. A cease and desist. You're using branding elements that legally belong to Bean and Bloom now. My breath caught. This is a joke. It's business, she echoed my landlord's phrase perfectly. You should consider closing voluntarily before the situation becomes embarrassing. She smirked and walked out, heels clicking like a countdown. The cafe, once full of warmth, felt suddenly icy. Employees began quitting one by one, not out of disloyalty, but fear. They worried about career stability. They worried about being blacklisted by the Rising Star Cafe Group. Some couldn't look me in the eye when they turned in their resignations. I thanked them anyway. Within 3 months, the vibrant hub I once poured my heart into had turned into a shadow, customers sparse, tables empty, lights dimmer to save on bills. I spent long hours cleaning, baking, hoping each aroma might lure back one person who remembered what this cafe used to be. Every night, I locked the door with trembling hands, knowing one day soon, I might not have a key to turn. The final blow arrived quietly, a court envelope slipped beneath the door before dawn. I sat on the floor, reading the words that declared Lauren and her new partners were suing me for competitive interference and branding theft. They wanted damages. They wanted my closure. They wanted Hearth and Honey erased. Rain battered the windows. Water dripped from my sleeves as I set the papers down beside me, surrounded by the ghosts of everything I built, every choice, every recipe, every memory now tainted by betrayal. Lauren had taken almost everything. Almost. Because despite the wreckage, Hearth and Honey still stood. Barely breathing, wounded, bleeding financially, but it stood. And I wasn't gone yet. The storm outside grew fiercer. Wind whipped against the windows like it wanted inside, like even the weather had joined the pressure closing in. I stood, gathered the legal papers, and placed them carefully on the counter. Hearth and Honey had been my sanctuary. I wasn't ready to watch it drown. The next morning, I met with an attorney in a cramped office above a hardware store. His tie was crooked, but his handshake was firm. "You're up against a corporation with aggressive funding," he said as he flipped through the documents. "They're using every tactic possible." "I can't lose this place," I replied. "I need to fight." He nodded. "We'll file a response. It may buy us time." Time, that was the only resource I had left. Back at the cafe, I rearranged display cases, scrubbed countertops until my fingers pruned, and experimented with new menu items late into the night. I advertised small events, poetry evenings, knitting circles, holiday cookie decorating. Attendance trickled in, slow but steady. Enough to keep the lights on. Customers still approached me with sympathetic smiles. "We miss the old days," one woman told me. "I'm sorry all this happened," another whispered. But sympathy didn't pay invoices. Smile-heavy apologies didn't fill tables. Every night, after closing, I counted the register in silence. The sound of coins dropping into the tray became the soundtrack of survival. Employees had left, but one teenager asked to stay, Ethan, our part-time barista. His quiet nature helped calm the emptiness. He wiped down tables with focus and brewed espresso with care. "You don't have to pick sides," I reminded him. Ethan shook his head. "I'm not abandoning you too." His loyalty kept a fragile piece of me together. One afternoon, a man in a crisp suit entered with a clipboard. "I'm here from the health department," he said. I led him through the kitchen, maintaining a professional calm. We had passed every inspection since the day we opened. I offered documentation, temperature logs, sanitization records. He scribbled notes, peered into corners, checked expiration dates. When he finished, he snapped his binder shut. "You're compliant," he confirmed. "But we did receive an anonymous complaint about improper food handling. I'll need to return for a follow-up next month." An anonymous complaint. No guesswork needed to trace its origin. Social media comments turned vicious. "She copied Bean and Bloom. Who would support a thief? Heard she fired staff for fun." I scrolled only long enough to flag the worst posts before logging out, refusing to let fabricated cruelty dictate my movements. Still, the words lingered like stains. One evening, after closing, a knock sounded at the door. Lauren stood outside, hair sleek and lips tinted a darker shade than I remembered. She looked like someone polished her into a trophy. I unlatched the lock and stepped aside. She entered slowly, as if expecting the walls to collapse around her. "Mia," she began, "this fight is pointless. I'm not giving up. You can't win. Bean and Bloom has investors, lawyers, branding teams. You have sentimental value." She looked around with a smirk. "Pretty decor won't save you. You once said this place felt like home. That was before I realized home doesn't pay dividends. Her voice cut like sharp glass. You could stop this, I said. You can tell them to drop the case. Let us both exist. Lauren crossed her arms. Why would I? You're standing exactly where I stood for years, beneath someone else. It's your turn to feel small. She brushed past me, pausing at the threshold. Soon, no one will remember this place existed. Then she walked away, heels tapping like a countdown to demolition. The next morning, a thick envelope arrived from the courthouse. A judge had scheduled the hearing sooner than expected. Panic tightened around my ribs, but I pushed through the day. A small group of friends from book club visited that evening. They brought hugs and encouragement, filling the cafe with gentle chatter. For a moment, laughter returned to the walls. After they left, I found a note under a teacup. We'll help however we can. You're not alone. The words warmed me more than the tea. A week later, Ethan ran inside breathless from his lunch break. They're expanding again, he said. Bean and Bloom bought the storefront next to them. And I overheard 2 employees saying their goal is to get this place shut down by New Year's. New Year's was 3 weeks away. I tightened my apron and continued serving customers, pretending I wasn't counting days. On the sidewalk outside Hearth and Honey, posters appeared overnight. Support local innovation, not imitation. Bean and Bloom, the future of coffee culture. Our cafe wasn't mentioned by name, but the implication was loud. People walking by glanced through our windows with pity or curiosity. The posters kept reappearing no matter how many times I tore them down. A battle fought on concrete and adhesive. Light snow fell one evening. I stood at the front window watching flakes drift past lampposts. A young couple walked hand in hand, stopping to read our hours posted on the glass. Let's go to Bean and Bloom, the woman said. This place is old news. They left without stepping inside. I didn't move. I waited until the snow erased their footprints. Late that night, when I finally closed, I swept the floors and locked the register. The cafe was quiet, too quiet. Silence was the cruelest reminder of absence. As I turned to leave, a loud crash echoed from the back alley. I rushed through the swinging door to find the trash bins knocked over, bags ripped open. Papers scattered, old invoices, supplier letters, discarded prototypes of menu cards. Among the debris, I saw a familiar mint green jacket vanishing around the corner. Lauren. There had been no need for her to be near the cafe at this hour. Unless she was planting something. Or taking something. Or watching me fail up close. I secured the alley, triple locking the door. The next morning, a news crew arrived without warning. A reporter shoved a microphone toward me. We're doing a piece on recent tensions between local businesses. Would you like to comment on allegations that your cafe sabotaged Bean and Bloom's launch? I never. The cameraman zoomed in closer. Some say you're retaliating because their concept outperformed yours. Any response? I stepped back. We haven't sabotaged anyone. We're trying to stay open. The reporter smiled like she'd caught something juicy. So you admit Bean and Bloom is stronger? Ethan rushed to intervene. Leave her alone. They left, satisfied with half-snatched quotes. That night, the local news aired a segment. Selective editing made me look defensive, unstable, desperate. Comment sections exploded again. The damage stretched further. The landlord sent another notice, rent increase pending. The corporation wanted him to force my hand. He apologized every time we spoke, but apologies didn't change signatures on contracts. When I locked up, frost coated the windows. My breath clouded as I stood in the doorway, staring at the darkened street. Ethan stood beside me, hands buried in his jacket pockets. You're still here, I said. He nodded. Someone has to be. His loyalty reminded me of the people who still believed in this place, maybe not a crowd, but enough. The next day brought a delivery I hadn't expected. A small wooden crate sat on our front steps with no label. I dragged it inside and pried it open. Inside, jars of honey. Dozens of them. The same brand we'd lost months ago. A note attached. Saw what they did. You deserve better. Don't give up. No signature. Hope often arrived quietly. The court hearing approached faster than I could prepare for. The attorney worked late, drafting arguments, gathering evidence that our branding existed first and Bean and Bloom had exploited it. But Lauren wasn't done. The night before the hearing, someone hurled a brick through our front window. Glass shattered across tabletops. Cold air blasted into the cafe. Ethan called the police while I swept fragments into piles. The officers promised to investigate. They didn't write much down. I boarded the window with plywood, painting a paper heart on it with a marker, trying to hide the wound. On the morning of the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse in a worn but neatly pressed coat. Snow fell softly, landing on my shoulders like small reminders to breathe. Lauren arrived surrounded by suit-wearing men and women. She looked radiant, as if destruction were a fragrance she'd grown accustomed to wearing. Our eyes met. She smiled. Not kindly. Like a victor acknowledging the defeated. Inside the courtroom, the judge reviewed filings. Lawyers exchanged arguments. Screens displayed timelines and branding comparisons. Witnesses testified, some neutral, some leaning toward Bean and Bloom, influenced by money or fear. At one point, the corporation's attorney slid a thick folder toward my lawyer. In bold letters, across the top. Settlement proposal, voluntary closure. If she signs, the attorney said, we'll drop the suit and spare her any financial damage. She can walk away peacefully. It's the reasonable choice. Lauren nodded along as if offering mercy. The judge called for a recess, giving me time to consider the offer. Lawyers stepped aside to speak privately. I stood alone near the benches, staring at the folder as if it contained a verdict on my entire life. Lauren pulled me aside. This is your exit, she said quietly. Take it while you can still leave standing. I looked at the courtroom doors, imagining everything waiting outside, an empty building, a lease hanging by threads, a business bleeding slow. But behind that, memories of morning crowds, laughter, comfort served on plates, community stitched together one coffee at a time. I closed the folder without reading further. I'm not signing, I said. Lauren's expression faltered. Not fear, irritation. We'll crush you, she said. You know that. Maybe, I replied. But you won't erase me. Court resumed. The battle wasn't over. The hardship was far from done. But something had changed. Lauren no longer looked untouchable. Something in her eyes flickered. A crack in her confidence. A hint that she feared. I might survive the storm she created. The day Lauren's lawyer demanded I shut down Hearth and Honey, I expected threats. I expected arrogance. What I didn't expect was company. A knock rattled the front door after closing time. I wasn't in the mood to entertain customers, but when the knock came again, firmer this time, I wiped my hands on my apron and forced myself forward. A familiar face waited outside beneath a dripping umbrella, Caleb Pierce, the freelance photographer who used to showcase my pastries online back when we were thriving. He looked nervous. Out of place. His usual confident smirk replaced by tight worry. I unlocked the door, and he stepped inside, dripping water onto the entry mat. You're closed, I know, he said, breath uneven. But I needed to talk to you. My stomach tightened. If this is about Lauren. It is, he cut in. But not in the way you think. He reached into his backpack and set a thick folder on the counter. It landed with a heavy thud, like a stack of secrets demanding attention. I didn't want to get involved, he continued. But watching what she's doing to you. I can't stay quiet. I stared at the folder without touching it, unsure whether I was ready for another round. What is that? Proof, he said. Proof of what Lauren's been planning for over a year. The room felt suddenly smaller. The air thicker. Caleb continued, his voice steadying as he spoke. She didn't steal your brand because she loved your idea. She stole it because someone else wanted it. I blinked at him. What do you mean, someone else? He leaned in, his eyes sharper than I'd ever seen. A buyer. Actually, a developer. She's been negotiating to sell Bean and Blossom, the brand, the menu, the trademark, everything, for a massive payout. My hand slid across the counter for support. Caleb opened the folder, revealing emails, printed contracts, screenshots of messages. Conversations between Lauren and a commercial real estate firm. Talks of expanding into a chain. Projected profits. A final clause that turned my blood cold. Acquire all rights currently held by Hearth and Honey by any means necessary. My voice barely pushed out. She planned all of this. Caleb nodded. Your recipes. Your aesthetic. Even your grandmother's honey glazed drizzle? She submitted it in the sale proposal as her own. My mouth dried. The glaze was part of my childhood, handwritten on a faded index card, a legacy of sticky fingers and summer kitchens. And she tried to sell it like merchandise. Why bring this to me? I asked, breath shaky. Why now? Caleb exhaled, guilt clouding his expression. Because I helped her in the beginning. I took photos of the samples she passed off as hers. I made the marketing behind Bean and Blossom look irresistible. I thought you knew. I thought you were involved. The betrayal stung, but not as sharply as knowing Lauren's ambition had always been fueled with my ingredients. Caleb stepped closer. But when I realized she was building her success on your downfall, I couldn't be part of it anymore. He pushed the folder toward me. You can fight her with this. My legs wobbled, but I steadied myself. The folder felt like armor in my hands, heavy, powerful, capable of turning the war in my favor. He wasn't finished. There's more. Something you really need to see. He pulled up a video on his phone. Lauren, speaking to the developer in a sleek office setting. Confident. Calculated. Smiling in that false, polished way I recognized too well. She thinks we're still friends, the recorded Lauren said. I'll get her to sign whatever we need. She trusts me blindly. As soon as she's out, we take the brand and run with it. The phone trembled in Caleb's grip. My heart didn't break this time. It crystallized into ice. That was recorded 2 weeks before you even opened, he finished quietly. She didn't want to celebrate your dream. She wanted to steal the moment it succeeded. Silence wrapped around us like a storm. No noise. No excuses. Just the truth. A truth sharp enough to cut the strings still attached to us. Finally, I managed, thank you. Caleb nodded. I've contacted a lawyer who specializes in intellectual property. She knows your case now. She says, you have a real chance. A chance. Something I hadn't felt in weeks. But then another emotion surfaced. One I didn't expect. Fire. Because Lauren had underestimated me. And that mistake was going to cost her. The next morning, Caleb returned, camera in hand, ready to help me rebuild instead of destroy. He took photos of fresh pastries, each crafted with care and sharpened focus. He interviewed customers still loyal to Hearth and Honey. Marjorie, who had been coming every morning since my opening week, spoke into Caleb's lens with unwavering conviction. Lauren's new shop is all shiny surfaces and pretty trends. But Mia? She built this place with heart. You can taste the honesty here. Word spread fast. Caleb posted a new campaign under a simple hashtag. Hashtag Stand with Hearth and Honey. Customers began tagging the cafe, sharing memories, posting side-by-side comparisons. People saw the truth. Lauren's empire started to crack, small fractures, subtle but growing. She noticed. She stormed into the cafe one afternoon, sharp heels striking the floor like weapons. Her eyes flicked to the cameras still rolling. Really, Mia? She scoffed. Playing the victim online? I met her gaze without flinching. Not playing anything. Just letting the truth speak. She smirked, stepping closer, voice low and venomous. You think a pity campaign will save you? I'm the one with resources, connections, investors. You're just a girl with a dying cafe. I smiled, calm, steady, controlled. Funny. That's not what your emails say. Lauren's expression faltered. What emails? Her voice cracked despite her attempt to mask it. The ones where you sold my recipes. My ideas. My brand, I said, nodding toward the cameras. People are learning what you really are. Her jaw locked. You're going to regret this. She tried to storm out, but a few customers stood in her path, not blocking her, just leaving her no graceful way out except to squeeze past them. She left red-faced, cracking under the weight of her own choices. Just when I thought I finally had leverage, something else happened, something neither of us saw coming. A woman in a tailored navy suit walked in that evening. Confident stride. Sharp eyes. She introduced herself with a firm handshake. Amelia Grant. Intellectual property attorney. Caleb sent me everything. You have an extremely strong case. Relief didn't even begin to describe what I felt. I believe you should file for an injunction, she continued. Not only can we stop the sale, we can legally force Lauren to shut down Bean and Blossom until this is resolved. I stared at her. Speechless. Hope fighting its way to the surface. But that's not all, Amelia added, sliding a document from her briefcase. This is a trademark confirmation. You registered Hearth and Honey months before Lauren touched a single form. The visual similarities between your branding and hers are extremely damning. Trademark. Proof. Power. Everything Lauren assumed I didn't have. My voice finally found its strength. So, she can't erase me anymore. Amelia smiled, small but victorious. No. In fact, you might erase her. It was the first time since the betrayal that the ground beneath me felt solid. The cafe lights reflected in the windows looked brighter. The honey jars glowed like tiny suns. Hearth and Honey wasn't a fading dream anymore. It was a fortress rebuilding itself. And the person who tried to steal my life? She was about to lose hers. Not to revenge, but to consequences. Real ones. The morning of the injunction hearing, Hearth and Honey smelled like fresh bread and courage. Caleb met me at the door, camera in hand. Amelia stood beside him, calmly reviewing her notes. Customers gathered outside, not to mourn a failing business, but to support a surviving one. Hashtag Stand with Hearth and Honey signs lifted high above the crowd. Lauren arrived late, flanked by her attorney and a frazzled PR agent. She looked different now, tired, jittery, desperate behind the polished mask. The courtroom filled with quiet tension as the case was called. Lauren's lawyer tried to dismiss everything as a misunderstanding, a friendship gone messy. Fabricated jealousy. Coincidental similarities. Until Amelia slid a binder onto the evidence table. Emails. Contracts. Screenshots. And then, the dagger. The video. Lauren's voice filled the room. She thinks we're still friends. I'll get her to sign whatever we need. A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Lauren's face drained of color. She looked like she had fallen through ice. Amelia delivered the final blow. Your Honor, this is not coincidence. It is premeditated theft. Lauren's attorney tried to salvage her dignity, but the judge silenced him with a firm gesture. In a calm, unwavering voice, the judge ruled. Effective immediately, Bean and Blossom is to shut down pending further litigation. All proprietary products and materials are to be returned to Ms. Carter. And Ms. Hayes is prohibited from contacting her. Lauren's breath hitched, the sound of a collapsing empire. For the first time since she betrayed me, she was silent. As we left the courtroom, supporters lined the hallway. A few even applauded. Caleb captured everything, not to humiliate her, but to honor the truth. Lauren tried to approach me, but Amelia stepped between us. Lauren's voice cracked, barely audible. Mia, please. I didn't think. I never meant for it to go. I raised a hand gently. Actions brought us here, Lauren. Not intentions. Her tears fell freely. I didn't feel victory. Just finality. Then I walked away, and didn't look back. Back at Hearth and Honey, the crowd outside cheered as I returned. The cafe lights glowed warm, reflecting off the windows like little beacons. Honey jars gleamed on their shelves, a celebration of resilience. Caleb snapped a photo of the moment, not for marketing, but memory. Marjorie hugged me, her voice full of pride. We stood by you because you stand by us. Customers poured in. Tables filled. Laughter returned. Coffee steamed. The register chimed like music. Hearth and Honey was alive again, stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. I stepped behind the counter, hands steady as I drizzled my grandmother's glaze over fresh pastries, a recipe no one could ever take. Caleb approached with a quiet smile. You fought for your dream. And you won. I looked around the space that once felt like a burden and now felt like a heartbeat. No, I said gently. I didn't win alone. Community. Truth. Self-worth. Those were the ingredients that saved me. As the sun set over the cafe's warm windows, I taped a small sign near the register, words that felt like both a promise and a victory. Built with heart. Protected by strength. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've had to fight to protect your dreams, then you know, standing up for yourself isn't revenge. It's survival. It's growth. And sometimes, it's the beginning of something stronger than fear. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to reclaim what was yours? Like this video if you believe every small dream deserves protection. Subscribe for more stories and second chances. And remember, even when the world tries to take your fire, your spark is yours to keep.